A secret spiritual rebellion once shook the foundations of medieval Europe. This is the story of the Bogomils, a mysterious Gnostic sect branded as heretics and hunted to the edge of extinction. For centuries, their radical beliefs offered a hidden path to enlightenment, challenging the very core of religious power. By the end of this journey, you will understand the powerful esoteric truths they guarded and why their message still resonates today. We will uncover how they saw the material world as a prison and what secret knowledge they believed could set the soul free. What does it truly mean to seek spiritual freedom against all odds? The very name Bogomil carries a profound and poignant weight. It is most often translated from the Old Slavic as worthy of God's pity or sometimes beloved of God, a title they claimed for themselves as the true spiritual elect in a world they saw as fallen. These were not merely disgruntled peasants. The Bogomils formed a Christian dualist sect that took root in the heart of the First Bulgarian Empire during the 10th century. Their radical message resonated across the entire social spectrum. While their core teachings found a willing audience among the common people, burdened by feudal taxes and an institutional church, they also attracted nobles seeking a more authentic faith and even some clergy disillusioned with the growing materialism of their own hierarchy. This created a powerful, cross-class spiritual underground. Imagine a noblewoman secretly funding a Bogomil preacher, or a village priest who led his flock in public while privately guiding them toward these forbidden truths. Their communities were necessarily secretive and intensely ascetic. They lived simple, austere lives, often within mainstream society, yet they were bound together by a shared, hidden knowledge that set them utterly apart. They saw themselves as the keepers of a pure, original Christianity, a luminous thread of truth running through the dark tapestry of a corrupted world that was, in time, destined to condemn them for it. This spiritual rebellion ignited in a world of immense cultural and political pressure. The 10th century First Bulgarian Empire was a volatile crossroads, caught between the towering influence of the Byzantine Empire to the south and its own complex Slavic identity. It was a true melting pot of beliefs, where ancient folk traditions mingled with Orthodox Christianity, and where the radical dualist ideas of earlier groups like the Paulicians seeped across the border. The Paulicians, another persecuted sect, viewed the material world as the creation of an evil demiurge, a powerful concept that would find fertile new ground in Bulgaria. Into this simmering cauldron stepped a figure known to history as Pope Bogomil. The name itself means priest, and he was a priest who served within the official church structure. Historical records are sparse, blurring the man into legend, but tradition holds that it was this very priest, Bogomil, who first synthesized these disparate influences into a coherent and potent new doctrine. He became the voice of a profound spiritual discontent. The Bulgarian Empire under Tsar Peter I was a time of official state consolidation, where the church became deeply entwined with royal power. For many, this alliance meant the faith had grown corrupt, worldly, and distant from the simple, transformative message of the Gospels. Peasants groaned under heavy taxes that often flowed to support a lavish ecclesiastical hierarchy. They saw bishops and abbots living in wealth that seemed to contradict the apostolic poverty of early Christianity. Bogomil's teachings were a direct, powerful response to this perceived betrayal. His doctrine offered a stark explanation for the suffering and injustice they witnessed daily. It proposed that the world of matter, including their own oppressive institutions, was not created by a benevolent God, but by a lesser, flawed, and often malicious being. This was not a God worthy of worship, but a cosmic jailer. The established church, in their view, was merely this jailer's chief warden, enforcing rules in a prison it mistook for a kingdom. Can you hear the revolutionary quiet in that thought? It was a heresy born not from a desire for chaos, but from a deep, aching hunger for a purer, more authentic connection to the divine, a connection that the official powers of the world seemed determined to obscure. This radical dualism was the very heart of their rebellion, a cosmic secret that redefined everything. The Bogomils believed in not one, but two eternal and opposing gods. On one side stood the true, good God, a being of pure spirit and light, utterly transcendent and completely separate from the flawed world we perceive with our senses. This true God was the source of all that was good, eternal, and truly real, but was distant, unreachable from within the confines of the physical universe. Opposing this boundless goodness was an evil God, a lesser and deeply flawed deity whom they identified as the creator of the material world. This was the demiurge, a word meaning craftsman or artisan, and in their eyes this was the being described in the Old Testament. The God who commanded armies, who demanded sacrifices, who fashioned Adam from clay and Eve from a rib, was not the ultimate source of all things. He was a jealous, flawed, and often malicious cosmic warden. Can you feel the profound shift in perspective this creates? The entire physical cosmos, from the stars in the sky to the very flesh on our bones, was not a sacred creation of a benevolent father. It was a meticulously crafted prison, built by a malevolent jailer to trap divine sparks of light, our true spiritual selves, within layers of matter. This stood in stark, heretical opposition to mainstream Christian monotheism, which held that a single, all-powerful, and wholly good God created the material world and called it good. For the established church, the Bogomil belief was a direct assault on the very nature of God, a blasphemy that turned the world from a garden to be stewarded into a dungeon to be escaped. Every sensation of pleasure, every pang of hunger, every attachment to the physical was, in this view, another chain designed to keep the soul forgetful of its true, luminous home. The entire human experience became a test of remembrance, a struggle to see through the illusion of the material and yearn for the distant, silent God of pure spirit. If the physical world is a prison, then every comfort and connection within it becomes a chain. This stark logic led the Bogomils to embrace a life of radical renunciation. They did not seek to reform the world, but to escape it entirely, and their path was one of extreme asceticism. For them, the very act of procreation was a profound moral dilemma. They saw marriage not as a sacred union, but as a mechanism for the demiurge to perpetuate his cosmic trap. By creating new physical bodies, human beings were complicit in ensnaring more divine sparks of light within the corrupt material shell. Some within the movement saw marriage as a necessary evil for social order, but their most devout members, the Perfecti, rejected it completely, living in celibacy to break the cycle of soul imprisonment. Their dietary laws were equally severe. They practiced a strict form of vegetarianism, believing that the consumption of meat, a product of death and suffering, further entangled the spirit in the base passions of the flesh. They also abstained from wine, viewing alcohol as a substance that clouded the mind and strengthened the body's hold over the soul. Every meal was a deliberate act of defiance against the creator of the material world. But their most visible and dangerous rebellion was their iconoclasm. They rejected the entire physical apparatus of the state church. They saw the ornate cross not as a holy symbol, but as the very instrument of torture used to kill Christ, a creation of the evil God and therefore an object of contempt, not veneration. They refused to worship in grand church buildings, which they viewed as lavish palaces built for the demiurge's chief servants. The beautiful icons and holy relics adored by the Orthodox faithful were, to a Bogomil, nothing more than carved wood and painted plaster, idols that distracted from the true, formless God of spirit. They even rejected the physical sacraments, like baptism by water or the Eucharist, seeing them as empty rituals that bound people to the material world rather than freeing them from it. This was not mere theological disagreement, it was a total spiritual protest. While the official church accumulated vast lands, golden chalices, and political power, the Bogomils stood as a living critique, their austere lives a silent sermon against the opulence they believed proved the church's corruption. Their world-denying stance was a powerful, embodied argument that true divinity could never be found in a gilded cage. Their cosmology unfolds a vast and tragic drama, a story of a fall from grace that explains the very fabric of our existence. At the beginning, there was only the true, good God, a boundless realm of pure spirit and light. This God had a firstborn son, a being of immense power and beauty named Satanael, whose name means the one who opposes God. But pride took root in Satanael's heart. He looked upon his own glory and desired to be equal to his father, to create a kingdom of his own. This rebellion led to his fall from the heavenly realms, and he became the first heretic, cast out from the presence of the true God. It was this fallen being, this Satanael, who then fashioned the entire material cosmos. He became the demiurge, the craftsman of a dark and imperfect world, a pale imitation of the true spiritual reality he could no longer reach. He populated this new world with his own angelic followers, who had fallen with him, and then, seeking to create a being in his own image, a vessel to worship him, he formed the first man, Adam, from the clay of the earth. He breathed into Adam, but he could only grant a material, animate life, a soul bound to the flesh. Adam lay there, a magnificent but empty statue, unable to move or truly live. The story, however, takes a profound turn here. Seeing this trapped and incomplete creation, the true, good God took pity. In a moment of divine intervention, God sent a spark of his own luminous spirit into Adam. This was the true soul, a captive fragment of the divine light, now imprisoned within the physical body crafted by Satanael. This single act changed everything. Humanity became a living contradiction, a being of matter animated by a spirit from a higher realm. We carry within us both the prison and the key, the mud of the earth and the light of heaven. This is why the Bogomils saw the physical body with such ambiguity, and why they believed our deepest spiritual yearning is actually a form of divine homesickness. But how could this trapped light ever find its way home? Their answer redefined the very meaning of salvation. For the Bogomils, Jesus Christ was not the Son of the Old Testament God. He was not a physical man of flesh and blood who suffered and died on a material cross. They saw that entire narrative as a cruel deception, a story crafted by the Church of the demiurge. Instead, Christ was a direct emanation from the true, good God, a being of pure spirit who only appeared to take human form. He was a divine phantom sent on a rescue mission into the prison of matter. His purpose was not to die as a blood sacrifice for sins, but to be a teacher and a revealer. He came to bring gnosis, the secret knowledge of who we truly are and where we come from. He walked among humanity to remind our trapped spirits of our celestial origin, to teach us that this world is not our home, and to show us the path of asceticism and spiritual awakening that would allow our divine spark to disentangle from matter and return to the boundless light. The crucifixion, then, was an illusion. A spiritual being cannot be killed by nails and wood. It was a final act of theater, a lesson demonstrating the ultimate power of spirit over a material illusion of death. His true resurrection was the awakening of this knowledge within his followers, so the salvation he offered was not through faith in a historical event, but through the direct, personal acquisition of this liberating understanding. To know yourself is to know you are divine light, and that knowledge alone is what sets you free. This secret knowledge, this gnosis, was the only key that could unlock the soul's prison. For the Bogomils, salvation was not a matter of blind faith or the performance of sacraments. It was a profound, internal awakening, a sudden and transformative realization of one's own true nature. Imagine living your entire life believing you were a prisoner, only to have a whispered truth reveal you are actually a king in disguise. That was the power of gnosis. It was the direct, personal understanding that your innermost self is not this body of flesh, subject to pain and decay, but a radiant spark of the divine light, a fragment of the true, good God that has been lost and trapped in a world of darkness. This realization was not just intellectual, it was experiential. It was the moment a person truly grasped that their deepest spiritual longings were not for a better life in this world, but were in fact memories of a home they had forgotten. This awakening was the beginning of their liberation, the first step on the path out of the material illusion. This stands in stark contrast to the paths offered by the powerful medieval churches. Both the Catholic and Orthodox institutions built vast, intricate systems of external rituals. Your salvation, they taught, was mediated through the physical church, its ordained priests, its water baptism, its Eucharistic bread and wine. It was a path dependent on sacred objects, holy buildings, and a complex hierarchy that stood between the individual and God. The Bogomils saw this entire system as a grand deception, a clever trick of the evil creator to keep humanity focused on the material world, worshipping the very jailer who imprisoned them. Their path required no magnificent cathedrals, for the true temple was the awakened heart. It required no physical sacraments, for the true communion was the direct recognition of the divine light within. This was the ultimate spiritual rebellion, an assertion that the power for salvation lay not in any external institution, but within the secret knowledge held in the soul of every person. But how was this secret knowledge, this dangerous gnosis, actually transmitted and safeguarded in a hostile world? The answer lies with a remarkable group of individuals known as the Perfecti, or the elect. These were the spiritual masters of the movement, men and women who had fully embraced the path of renunciation and had undergone their own profound awakening. They were the living conduits of gnosis. Their role was not to perform rituals, but to serve as guides and teachers. Through secret meetings, often held in the safety of a member's home under the cover of night, the Perfecti would impart the core dualist teachings to new initiates. They would lead them in special prayers, the most important being the Lord's Prayer, which they recited with deep reverence but with a unique interpretation, seeing it as a direct plea to the true, distant God of light, not the creator of this world. The transmission of gnosis was an intimate process. A Perfecti would not simply lecture, they would guide a seeker through a process of questioning and reflection, helping them to see the flaws and suffering in the material world, and gently leading them to the liberating conclusion that this could not be the work of a benevolent God. The final, most powerful initiation was the ceremony known as the consolamentum, the consolation. This was not a baptism with water, but a spiritual baptism, a laying on of hands by the Perfecti that was believed to transfer the Holy Spirit directly to the initiate. It was the final seal of their awakening, the moment they were fully welcomed into the community of the enlightened and set firmly on the path of return. The Perfecti themselves, having received this spiritual baptism, were then bound to live in absolute purity, adhering to their strict ascetic code as a living testament to their freedom from the material world. They were the walking evidence that the prison could be transcended, and their very presence was a silent, powerful sermon that threatened the foundations of every cathedral in Europe. This two-tiered structure formed the resilient, hidden backbone of the entire Bogomil movement, a brilliant adaptation for survival. At its heart were the Perfecti, the perfect ones. These were not priests in any conventional sense, but spiritual athletes who had undergone a profound and irreversible transformation. Their initiation was the ceremony known as the consolamentum. This was not a ritual involving water, wine, or any physical element. Instead, it was a spiritual baptism, a transmission of divine power directly from one Perfecti to the initiate. The ceremony involved the laying on of hands and the recitation of sacred prayers, most importantly the Lord's Prayer. It was believed that in this solemn moment, the Holy Spirit itself descended upon the recipient, sealing their spirit and setting it firmly on the path back to the realm of light. For the Perfecti, this act was everything. It marked their final liberation. They believed that after their physical death, their awakened spirit would journey directly to the good God, forever free from the cruel cycle of reincarnation within the material world. In return for this priceless gift, they took on a life of absolute austerity. They vowed to follow a strict ethical code that rejected the world of the demiurge in its entirety. This meant perpetual celibacy, a strict vegetarian diet, and a complete refusal to swear oaths. They owned few possessions and traveled constantly, living on the charity of others while secretly guiding the faithful. They were the living scripture of the Bogomils, their very existence a testament to the possibility of escape. Surrounding and supporting this radiant inner circle was the far larger body of ordinary followers, known as the credents or the believers. These were the men and women who lived normal lives within mainstream society. They were farmers, merchants, artisans, and even minor nobles. They married, raised families, and worked in the world, all while holding the secret gnosis in their hearts. Their primary spiritual duty was to support and protect the wandering Perfecti, offering them food, shelter, and most crucially, secrecy. In return, they received spiritual instruction and the hope of their own eventual liberation. A believer would typically request the consolamentum only at the very end of their life, on their deathbed. This deathbed ritual was their ultimate goal. By receiving the spiritual baptism just before passing, they could purge the sins of a life lived in the world and achieve the same liberation as the Perfecti, without having to endure decades of extreme asceticism. This pragmatic system created an incredibly durable underground network. Each small cell of believers, connected to one or a few Perfecti, operated in near total isolation. If one cell was discovered and crushed by the authorities, the others would remain safe, unaware of its fate. This decentralized cell-like structure, mirroring the very sparks of light trapped in matter, is what allowed the Bogomil heresy to smolder for centuries, spreading its quiet fire across the face of medieval Europe. Their spiritual rebellion was encoded in a hidden library of sacred texts. While the official church wielded a standardized Bible, the Bogomils curated their own canon, a collection of scriptures that validated their radical worldview. They drew a sharp line between the Old and New Testaments, viewing them as the works of two opposing gods. The God of the Old Testament, with his commandments, his wars, and his creation of the material world, was their demiurge, Satanael. Consequently, they rejected books like Genesis and Exodus as the literal accounts of the prison's construction. Their reverence was reserved almost exclusively for the New Testament, which they saw as the message from the true, good God. Yet even here, they read with a unique lens. The Gospel of John was their favorite, with its profound opening, "In the beginning was the Word." They interpreted this word as the divine Logos, the emanation of the true God that descended as the phantom Christ to bring liberating knowledge. This was not a story of flesh and blood, but of spirit and truth. To further support their cosmology, they cherished apocryphal texts, books excluded from the official Bible. One of the most important was the vision of Isaiah. This text describes the prophet Isaiah being taken on a journey through the seven heavens. For the Bogomils, this was not just a vision, it was a map of the soul's ascent. It detailed how the soul must pass through the realms of the evil archons, the servants of the demiurge, who try to block its return to the highest heaven, the realm of the true God. This celestial journey perfectly illustrated their belief that the material cosmos was a series of barriers designed to keep the divine light trapped. They even created their own powerful literature. A central text was the Secret Supper, also known as the Interrogatio Iohannis. This Bogomil work reimagines the Last Supper as a moment of profound revelation. In it, the Apostle John questions Jesus not about his impending death, but about the deepest mysteries of the universe. Jesus reveals the true story of the fall of Satanael, the creation of the flawed material world, and the imprisonment of souls. He explains that the God of the Old Testament is the same being who tempted Adam and Eve, and that the serpent in the garden was actually a messenger of the true God, sent to bring them the gnosis of good and evil, the first spark of liberating knowledge. This subversive reinterpretation turned the foundational story of original sin on its head. Yet for all these powerful texts, the most vital teachings were never written down. To protect their communities from discovery and persecution, the deepest layers of Gnosis were transmitted orally from a Perfecti to a believer in absolute secrecy. The real, living scripture was not a book, but the whispered truth passed between trusted souls in the quiet of the night, a flame of knowledge that could not be extinguished by any earthly fire. This ultimate rite of passage was known as the consolamentum, the ceremony of spiritual baptism that marked a soul's final awakening. For a Bogomil, this was the single most important event of their entire existence. Imagine a quiet room, far from any church, where a small group of believers has gathered in secrecy. At the center stands a Perfecti, a man or woman who has already achieved this state of grace. The initiate, perhaps a long-time believer now on their deathbed, kneels before them. There is no water, no wine, no bread. The only element is spirit itself. The Perfecti places their hands upon the initiate's head. This simple act was believed to be the conduit for a direct and powerful transmission. Through this touch, the Holy Spirit itself was thought to pass from the perfected one to the seeker, sealing the divine spark within and setting it irrevocably on the path back to the realm of light. The entire ceremony was solemn, intense, and focused entirely on this transfer of spiritual power, a silent thunderclap in the soul that promised permanent liberation from the cycle of material existence. Throughout this sacred act, the words of the Lord's Prayer were recited with a reverence and meaning far beyond the common interpretation. For the Bogomils, this was not merely a set of pious phrases, it was a potent incantation, a coded map of their entire cosmology. Every line held a secret dualist key. When they prayed, "Our Father, who art in heaven," they were not addressing the God of the Old Testament. They were calling out to the distant, true God of pure spirit, the Father of light who existed far beyond the corrupted skies of this world. But the most revealing and radical interpretation came with the line, "And lead us not into temptation." In their view, this was a desperate plea not to avoid everyday moral failings, but to be spared from a far greater cosmic danger. They understood temptation as the power of the evil archon, the demiurge who ruled this world. They were literally begging the true God not to allow their souls to be delivered into the clutches of this malevolent world ruler ever again, in this life or any future incarnation. It was a prayer for final escape. Their daily spiritual practice reinforced this orientation away from the material world. They would often pray while facing the east, the direction of the rising sun. This was not sun worship, but a powerful symbolic gesture. The east represented the distant realm of the true God, the source of the divine light from which they had fallen. By turning their bodies and their hearts toward that symbolic horizon, they were physically enacting their deepest yearning, turning away from the darkness of the created world and reaching for their true home. This comprehensive rejection of the physical extended to every other sacrament of the mainstream church. They viewed baptism by water as utterly meaningless, a ritual of the demiurge that could only cleanse the body, the very prison they sought to escape. The Eucharist was seen as a profound deception, for how could the true God of spirit be contained within a piece of material bread? To them, the entire liturgical system was a complex trick, a series of empty gestures designed to keep humanity pacified and focused on worshiping the creator of their own prison. In the silent hand-to-hand transmission of the consolamentum, they found a purity that no cathedral ritual could ever offer. This hidden river of gnosis did not remain confined to the Balkan mountains. It began to flow west, carried along the bustling trade routes that connected empires and cultures. The spiritual DNA of the Bogomils would find its most famous and tragic expression in another group of heretics, the Cathars of southern France. These two movements were spiritual siblings, with the Cathars standing as the direct descendants of that original dualist rebellion. The transmission was surprisingly straightforward. Bogomil Perfecti, acting as missionaries, traveled west alongside merchants and traders. They moved through the wealthy merchant republics of northern Italy, where their ideas found a ready audience among a literate and questioning urban population. Perhaps even more importantly, knights and soldiers returning from the Crusades brought back more than just loot and stories. They carried these radical spiritual ideas with them from their contact with dualist communities in the East. By the 12th century, the seeds sown by these travelers had taken deep root in the fertile soil of Languedoc, in what is now southern France. There, they blossomed into the movement we know as Catharism. The similarities between the Bogomils and the Cathars are so profound that they cannot be mere coincidence. The Cathars shared the same core dualist cosmology. They too believed in a distant good god of light and an evil demiurge who crafted the material prison. They embraced the same radical asceticism, with their own Perfecti rejecting marriage, meat, and all oaths. Most tellingly, they practiced an identical rite of spiritual baptism, which they also called the consolamentum, a ceremony free of any physical element that served as the sole vehicle for salvation. This was not a parallel development, it was a direct inheritance, yet there were differences born of their unique environments. The Cathar Church in Languedoc became far more publicly organized and structured than the secretive Bogomil cells of the Balkans. At the height of their influence, the Cathars had their own bishops, dioceses, and even held public debates with Catholic clergy, enjoying the protection of powerful local nobles. This very public presence, however, made them a much clearer and larger target. While the Bogomils faced persecution, the Cathars provoked a full-scale crusade, the only one in history ever launched by the Catholic Church against a Christian population in Europe. The Albigensian Crusade, named after the city of Albi, was a campaign of extermination that lasted for decades and devastated the vibrant culture of southern France. In this light, the Bogomils were the motherlode, the original source of a spiritual current that would eventually shake Western Europe to its core. Their quiet, persistent heresy in the East fueled the great fire of the Cathar heresy in the West, proving that an idea, once awakened, cannot be so easily contained by borders or armies. The spiritual independence of the Bogomils could not be tolerated forever by the powers they defied. When the Byzantine Empire finally absorbed the First Bulgarian Empire in the early 11th century, it inherited a land simmering with this quiet heresy. The new rulers saw not a spiritual movement, but a disease threatening the very soul of their unified church and state. The first systematic, empire-wide persecution began under the shrewd and determined Emperor Alexios, the first Komnenos in the early 12th century. His primary target was a charismatic and learned Bogomil leader known as Basil the Physician, a man whose influence had grown so vast he was said to have disciples numbering in the thousands, even within the walls of Constantinople itself. Alexios could not simply arrest such a popular figure. He needed a public victory. He devised a cunning trap, inviting Basil to the imperial palace under the pretense of a private theological discussion, a meeting between two intellectuals. Basil, perhaps flattered or confident in his beliefs, accepted. The emperor received him with every courtesy, seating him on a magnificent throne and engaging him in a deep debate about the nature of God and creation. Unbeknownst to Basil, a secretary was hidden behind a curtain, meticulously transcribing every heretical word he uttered. For days, the debate continued, with Alexios drawing out the full scope of Basil's dualist beliefs, building an irrefutable record of his blasphemy. When the transcript was complete, the emperor revealed the deception. He presented the evidence and demanded that Basil and his followers immediately recant their errors and rejoin the Orthodox fold. Basil, confronted with this ultimate test, refused to deny the gnosis that defined his entire life. His defiance sealed his fate, Emperor Alexios, demonstrating the full might of the state against a single man of spirit, had Basil the physician burned at the stake in the Hippodrome of Constantinople. This was not merely an execution, it was a terrifying piece of political theater, a message to all who might question the established order. The public burning was meant to cauterize the heresy with fire. But the persecution did not end with one man. The Orthodox authorities, now fully alert to the danger, launched a systematic inquisition to purge the empire of this hidden cancer. They employed spies and informants to infiltrate the secretive cells of believers. Suspected Bogomils were arrested and subjected to intense interrogation, pressured to name their Perfecti and fellow initiates. Those who refused to confess and convert faced imprisonment, the confiscation of their property, or execution by fire. Forced conversions became a common tool, with entire communities compelled to publicly renounce their beliefs under threat of violence. This brutal campaign reveals the profound threat the Bogomils represented. It was not just a matter of incorrect theology. Their radical rejection of the material world was a direct assault on the foundation of Byzantine society, a society where the emperor was God's vice-regent on earth, and the Orthodox Church was the spiritual arm of the state. To deny the holiness of the material church, its icons, its sacraments, and its hierarchy, was to deny the legitimacy of the entire imperial system. The Bogomils, in their quiet asceticism, were spiritual anarchists, and the empire responded with the only language it knew, the language of absolute power and purifying flame. Yet even as the flames of persecution rose in the Byzantine Empire, the embers of this heresy glowed ever brighter in the west. The rugged mountains of Serbia and, most significantly, Bosnia offered a new sanctuary where Bogomil ideas could evolve in relative freedom. In Bosnia, this spiritual current found its most powerful political patron, a ruler willing to shield it from the wrath of Rome and Constantinople. Under the rule of Ban Kulin in the late 12th century, the movement often called the Bosnian Church was not merely tolerated, it flourished under what amounted to official state protection. Ban Kulin himself issued a famous charter in 1189, pledging to the Pope that he would lead his people back to Roman Catholicism, a promise made largely to stave off foreign intervention. In reality, his reign was a golden age for this indigenous Christian faith. The Bosnian Church operated with its own hierarchy, its own clergy, and its own unique religious texts, all while enjoying the favor of the Bosnian nobility. It created what was, in effect, a state-sponsored or at least state-tolerated church, a rare kingdom of heresy in the heart of medieval Europe. This unique situation has sparked a fierce and ongoing debate among historians. Was the Bosnian Church truly Bogomil in the dualist sense, a direct continuation of the movement from Bulgaria, or was it something else entirely, a unique and independent Christian sect that shared some ascetic practices but rejected the core belief in a dual divinity? The evidence is tantalizingly ambiguous. The Bosnian Church certainly shared the Bogomils' profound asceticism, their rejection of the cross, and their deep suspicion of the material wealth and power of the established churches. Their clergy, known as Strojniks or Didusi, lived in simple communities called hijas, mirroring the austere lives of the Bogomil Perfecti. They used a Slavic liturgy and developed their own sacred manuscripts, creating a distinct religious culture separate from both Rome and Byzantium. For its adherents, it was simply the true, pure Christian faith, uncorrupted by foreign influence. This very independence, however, made it a grave threat to its powerful neighbors. Hungary and the papacy looked upon this heretical kingdom with growing alarm. How could a sovereign state exist in Europe, openly defying the spiritual authority of Rome? The answer was a call to crusade. In the 13th and 14th centuries, Hungary launched repeated military campaigns against Bosnia, framed as holy wars to eradicate heresy and bring the land back into the Catholic fold. These invasions were brutal, but for a long time, the mountainous terrain and the resilience of the Bosnian nobility allowed the Bosnian Church to survive. The final blow came with the relentless advance of the Ottoman Empire in the 15th century. After their conquest of Bosnia in 1463, the Ottomans presented the population with a stark choice. The Bosnian Church, already weakened by centuries of crusade and internal division, found itself with no powerful allies. Its members faced conversion to either Catholicism, now championed by the defeated but still present Hungarian interest, or to Islam, the faith of their new Ottoman rulers. Many of the nobility, seeking to preserve their lands and status, converted to Islam. The common people largely converted to either Islam or Roman Catholicism. The institutional structure of the Bosnian Church, that unique kingdom of faith, was dismantled and faded from history. Its dissolution marked the end of the last major political refuge for the spiritual descendants of the Bogomils, silencing a voice that had whispered of a different path for centuries. Every feudal oath and church tithe was an echo of the prison's design. The Bogomils' spiritual rejection of the material world was not an abstract theological stance. It was a quiet, total rebellion against the very structure of medieval society. By declaring the physical cosmos the creation of an evil god, they implicitly branded every institution built upon that world as fundamentally illegitimate. The feudal hierarchy, with its king anointed by God at the top, was not a divine order but a cruel pyramid scheme orchestrated by the demiurge. How could a king rule by divine right if the god who supposedly granted that right was a malevolent jailer? The vast wealth of the institutional church, its golden chalices and sprawling estates, was not a sign of divine favor but the ultimate proof of its corruption, a direct service to the creator of matter. Their resistance was embodied in their daily actions. Their strict pacifism was a direct challenge to a society built on knightly valor and holy war. They refused to bear arms or participate in violence, seeing it as a brutal enforcement of the material world's cruel rules. Even more subversive was their refusal to swear oaths. In a medieval world bound by sacred vows, this was an act of profound defiance. A vassal swore an oath of fealty to his lord. A serf swore oaths binding him to the land. A king was crowned upon a holy oath before God. The entire legal and military foundation of feudalism rested on this practice. By rejecting oaths, the Bogomils withdrew their consent from the entire system. They became ungovernable, their loyalty belonging only to the distant true God of spirit, not to any earthly power. This made them far more dangerous than common criminals. A criminal breaks the law, but a Bogomil denied the law's very right to exist. Their heresy was not just a spiritual error, it was a political contagion that threatened to dissolve the bonds holding society together. For both the emperor and the pope, the eradication of the Bogomils was not merely a religious duty, it was an act of political survival. A faith that taught people they owed nothing to this world was a direct threat to every throne and every altar built upon it. Their forbidden library held gospels the established church dared not include. Among these, one text stands out as the quintessential Bogomil scripture, a work known as the Gospel of the Secret Supper. This extraordinary document reimagines the Last Supper not as a farewell meal, but as a profound initiation into the universe's greatest mysteries. In this version, it is the Apostle John who reclines closest to Jesus, and he does not ask about betrayal or sacrifice. Instead, he poses the deepest possible questions. He asks about the origin of the world, the nature of the Creator, and the true story of the soul's fall. And Jesus, in response, unveils the entire Bogomil cosmos. He reveals that the ruler of this world is a fallen being named Satanael, who rebelled out of pride and then fashioned the material universe as his own flawed kingdom. He explains that the God of the Old Testament, the one who commanded Abraham and led the Israelites, is this very same Satanael. This was their ultimate secret, the gnosis that rewrote sacred history. In their telling, the serpent in the Garden of Eden was not a deceiver but a liberator, a messenger from the true God sent to give Adam and Eve the knowledge of good and evil, the first spark of awareness that would eventually lead to their escape from the demiurge's garden prison. Another vital text was the book of John the Evangelist, a visionary work that detailed the soul's perilous journey after death. It describes how the soul must ascend through the 7 heavens, each one ruled by a malevolent archon, a servant of the evil creator. These archons block the soul's path, demanding passwords and trying to trick it into returning to the cycle of reincarnation. Only a soul fortified with the secret knowledge, the gnosis of its true divine origin, can pass these celestial toll houses and continue its journey back to the realm of the true good God. For a Bogomil, this was not a metaphor, it was a literal map for the most important voyage they would ever undertake. These texts provided the narrative backbone for their entire worldview, offering a complete and internally consistent explanation for why the world is filled with suffering and how we can ultimately transcend it. Of course, the Orthodox Church saw these texts as poisonous lies, and they launched a relentless campaign to find and destroy every copy. Bogomil manuscripts were burned by the thousands, their ashes scattered to erase this heresy from memory. But we know of their contents today largely through the meticulous records kept by their persecutors. Inquisitors, determined to understand the enemy they were fighting, would interrogate captured Bogomils and force them to recount the stories from their forbidden books. These confessions, extracted under duress, were then written down in official trial records. It is a profound irony that the very archives built to exterminate the Bogomils became one of the primary vessels preserving their beliefs for posterity. Their most sacred truths survived, not in glorious illuminated manuscripts, but in the dry, legalistic transcripts of their own trials, a final testament to a faith that found a way to whisper its secrets even from the heart of the fire. This radical spiritual freedom offered a profound and startling path for women in the medieval world. Within the secret circles of the Bogomils, a woman was not defined by her role as a wife or mother, but by the divine spark within her. She could ascend to the highest rank of the movement and become one of the Perfecti. Upon receiving the consolamentum, a woman was transformed into a spiritual leader, a teacher, and a living conduit of gnosis with the same authority as any man. She could guide other seekers, transmit the Holy Spirit through the laying on of hands, and live as a wandering ascetic, utterly free from the control of any husband or father. This was a breathtaking departure from the norms of the time, where the mainstream church largely barred women from formal spiritual authority and defined their value through marriage and childbearing. The Bogomil rejection of the material world extended to a rejection of the very institutions that bound women to it. Since they viewed procreation as the demiurge's mechanism for trapping more divine light in fleshly prisons, they saw marriage and motherhood not as sacred duties, but as complicity in a cosmic crime. For a woman, choosing celibacy and the path of the Perfecti was the ultimate act of spiritual defiance. It was a way to refuse her designated role in the world system and strike directly at the heart of the evil creator's plan. This offered an alternative identity that was powerful and self-directed. A woman could be a master of secret knowledge, a guardian of a soul's journey home, rather than a vessel for creating new prisoners. To the feudal and ecclesiastical authorities, this was not just heresy, it was social dynamite. The traditional family, sanctified by the church, was the fundamental unit of medieval society. It ensured the orderly transfer of property, the raising of loyal subjects, and the perpetuation of the social order. A woman who renounced marriage and childbearing was removing herself from this system entirely. She became an ungovernable entity, her loyalty given not to a family or a lord, but to a distant god of light. The very idea that women were teaching men, leading spiritual cells, and publicly denouncing the sacraments of marriage and baptism was an intolerable inversion of the natural order as they saw it. It threatened to unravel the fabric of society from the inside out, making the Bogomil heresy not merely a theological error, but a direct assault on the foundations of their world. This hunt for hidden heretics required a new kind of weapon, one that targeted the soul itself. To uncover a Bogomil, the inquisitors developed a chillingly systematic process, turning the very details of their faith into damning evidence. They relied heavily on networks of spies and informants, ordinary people pressured or paid to report on their neighbors' secret lives, a whispered prayer meeting in a cellar, a neighbor who never seemed to eat meat, a traveler given silent shelter for the night. All these fragments of suspicion could trigger an arrest. Once a person was taken, the interrogation began, a psychological trap designed to force a confession. The inquisitors were not mere brutes. They were skilled theologians who knew the Bogomil beliefs intimately. They would ask seemingly innocent questions about Scripture, probing for the dualist interpretation they knew lay beneath the surface. A suspect might be asked to explain the story of creation or to recite the Lord's Prayer. This was a deliberate trap. The Bogomils used an older version of the prayer, which ended after the line, "But deliver us from evil." The Catholic Church had officially added the doxology, "For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory forever." A refusal to include those closing words, or even a simple hesitation, was seen as undeniable proof of heresy. It was a perfect snare, turning their most sacred prayer into a signed confession. Other daily behaviors became lethal giveaways. Their strict vegetarianism, a spiritual discipline, was viewed by authorities as a bizarre and suspicious rejection of God's provision. Their absolute refusal to swear oaths, a cornerstone of their pacifism, was interpreted as sedition, a denial of their duty to their feudal lord and to the Church. Even their profound reverence for the Gospel of John could be used against them, as inquisitors noted which scriptures a person favored during questioning. The punishments for those convicted were merciless and public, designed to terrify the population into conformity. A person's property and lands were confiscated, leaving their family destitute and serving as a powerful financial incentive for others to remain loyal to the state religion. For the unrepentant or for the Perfecti who were seen as the source of the spiritual infection, the sentence was death by fire. These public executions were not just about killing a heretic, they were a grotesque form of theater. The burning pyre in the town square was a visceral, terrifying spectacle, a warning seared into the memory of every onlooker. It screamed that this was the fate awaiting anyone who dared to look at the world through a different lens, who sought a God beyond the walls of the official cathedral. The echoes of their silenced voices refused to fade. Long after the last Bogomil communities dissolved into history, the spiritual currents they championed began to resurface in unexpected forms throughout Western esotericism. Their core dualist worldview, the stark division between a flawed material world and a transcendent realm of pure spirit, found new expression centuries later among thinkers who also sought a hidden truth behind the veil of conventional religion. You can hear a distinct echo of the Bogomil demiurge in the writings of certain Rosicrucian philosophers, who described the material cosmos as a dense, fallen state from which the enlightened soul must awaken. Similarly, the theosophical movement of the 19th century, with its elaborate maps of spiritual evolution and its emphasis on secret masters guarding ancient wisdom, channeled that same fundamental impulse, the belief that true reality is spiritual and that salvation comes through esoteric knowledge, not blind faith. These later movements may not have drawn a direct line back to the Bulgarian heretics, but they drank from the same deep well of Gnostic thought that the Bogomils helped to keep flowing through the darkest centuries. This created a powerful romantic legacy. By the 19th century, a potent image began to crystallize in the European imagination, the figure of the Cathar Perfecti, and by extension their Bogomil forebears, as the ultimate pure, persecuted spiritual seeker. They were reimagined not as dangerous heretics, but as tragic heroes of conscience, martyrs who chose the flame over betraying their inner light. This romantic vision portrayed them as holding a pristine Christianity, uncorrupted by the power and politics of the institutional church, a beacon of spiritual freedom brutally extinguished by an oppressive orthodoxy. This idealized image proved incredibly fertile ground for modern literature and alternative spiritualities. Novelists and poets were drawn to the dramatic pathos of their story, weaving tales of secret knowledge, doomed love, and heroic resistance against overwhelming force. More importantly, their core message, the rejection of a corrupt material world and the pursuit of a liberating gnosis, resonates powerfully in our own time. Modern spiritual movements that critique rigid dogma, champion personal enlightenment over institutional authority, and seek a direct, unmediated connection to the divine are, in a way, walking a path first cleared by these medieval dissenters. The Bogomil insistence that the divine spark resides within each person, waiting to be awakened by knowledge, remains a revolutionary and deeply attractive idea. It asks a timeless question, one that still challenges us today. How do we recognize the prison, and how do we find the key? The pyres may have consumed their bodies, but their memory seeped into the very soil, transforming from condemned heresy into the stuff of local legend. Across the Balkan villages, stories began to circulate, whispered from one generation to the next, of hidden treasures and secret tunnels. These were not tales of gold and jewels, but of a different kind of wealth entirely. A secluded cave in a mountainside was not just a geological formation, it was a forgotten Bogomil prayer house, a place where the Perfecti once gathered to perform the consolamentum away from prying eyes. A network of tunnels rumored to run beneath an old fortress was not merely a military relic. It was part of their clandestine network, a subterranean highway for a faith that had to move in shadows. The legends often spoke of heroic outlaws, men who robbed from the rich and gave to the poor, who were secretly portrayed as the last of the Bogomil faithful, their defiance against feudal lords a continuation of their spiritual war against the world's evil creator. In this way, the community's historical struggle for survival was encoded into folklore, their theological rebellion repackaged as a timeless fight for justice against oppression. This process allowed their essence to endure long after their doctrine was officially erased, preserving them not as heretics in the popular imagination, but as mystical ancestors and champions of the common people. When the modern nations of the Balkans began to forge their identities, emerging from centuries of Ottoman rule, they reached back into this well of folklore and rediscovered the Bogomils. In Bulgaria and Bosnia, the movement was dramatically re-evaluated. They were no longer a dangerous religious deviation, but the first freedom fighters. For the Bulgarians, the Bogomils represented an early form of national resistance against the overwhelming cultural and religious pressure of the Byzantine Empire. Their refusal to accept the state-sanctioned orthodoxy of Constantinople was reinterpreted as a brave stand for a uniquely Slavic spiritual expression, a declaration of intellectual independence long before the modern state existed. In Bosnia, their legacy is even more profound and complex. The Bosnian Church, with its deep connections to the Bogomil tradition, became a powerful symbol of a distinct national identity, separate from both their Eastern Orthodox and Roman Catholic neighbors. They were framed as the guardians of a primordial Bosnian spirituality, a pure, indigenous faith that was crushed by foreign crusades and then dissolved under the dual pressures of the Ottoman conquest. This reclamation transformed them from shadowy heretics into national martyrs, their persecution serving as a poignant historical precedent for later struggles against outside domination. The Bogomils, who rejected all earthly kingdoms, ironically became potent symbols for the very earthly kingdoms that later rose from their ashes. Their quest for transcendent spiritual freedom was recast as an early, powerful cry for national and religious self-determination, a narrative that still resonates deeply in the region today, proving that the most powerful ideas can outlive even the most determined attempts to destroy them. Their world of spirit left almost no mark upon the world of stone. How do you find the physical remains of a people who believed the physical world was a prison to be escaped? This is the central, frustrating puzzle facing archaeologists who search for the Bogomils. They were deliberately ephemeral, rejecting the very things that typically leave a durable historical footprint: grand churches, wealthy monasteries, and elaborate religious art. Their places of worship were not stone cathedrals, but quiet rooms in humble houses or secluded clearings in the forest, spaces that leave no distinct archaeological signature. This intentional invisibility makes every potential clue a subject of intense debate and fascination. The most compelling and controversial physical relics are the mysterious stexi. Scattered in their thousands across the rolling hills of Bosnia and Herzegovina, these are monumental tombstones, some standing upright, others lying flat like great stone slabs. They are often massively heavy, carved from solid limestone and covered in breathtakingly intricate reliefs. You see spirals and rosettes, scenes of hunting and knightly jousts, crescent moons, and radiant suns. They depict processions of people with raised arms, as if in a ritual dance or prayer. For a long time, these stunning monuments were popularly linked to the Bosnian Church, seen as the lasting legacy of the Bogomil tradition in the region. The logic was compelling. Here was a unique form of burial, distinct from both Catholic and Orthodox practices, created during the very period the Bosnian Church flourished. Perhaps these carvings encoded their dualist beliefs, the sun and moon representing the distant god of light, the hunting scenes symbolizing the soul's struggle against the archons of the material world. The figures with raised arms could be seen as the Perfecti, their souls yearning for release. It's a romantic and powerful idea that their secret faith was written in stone across the landscape. Yet the truth is far less certain. Modern scholarship has complicated this beautiful story. While some stexi are certainly found in areas with known Bosnian church activity, they were also commissioned by noble families who identified as Catholic or Orthodox. The motifs themselves, the spirals and solar symbols, are not exclusively Bogomil. They are part of a shared visual language found across medieval Europe. It appears the stexi are a regional cultural phenomenon, a magnificent form of medieval art that transcended religious boundaries, rather than a clear confessional statement of the Bogomil faith. This ambiguity is the perfect symbol of the archaeological hunt for these heretics. The evidence is always just out of focus, tantalizingly present but refusing to offer definitive proof. The real challenge is that their spirituality was internalized, a matter of secret knowledge and personal asceticism. You cannot dig up a whispered prayer or unearth a rejected desire for material wealth. Their most profound legacy was not in the objects they created, but in the objects they pointedly refused to create. This forces us to rely almost entirely on the words of their enemies, the polemics of Orthodox and Catholic inquisitors who described their beliefs in order to condemn them. Every account is filtered through layers of hostility and fear, making the discovery of a single, unambiguous artifact, a piece of pottery inscribed with a dualist prayer or a personal seal bearing a symbol they revered, the stuff of an archaeologist's dream. Until such a discovery is made, the Bogomils remain where they always were, just beyond the light of the fire. Their true presence felt more in the empty spaces they left behind than in any solid trace. Even today, the Bogomils remain cloaked in scholarly debate, their true nature shifting with each new piece of evidence. One of the most heated controversies revolves around their relationship with the Cathars of Western Europe. Were the Cathars a direct organizational offshoot, a colony planted by Bogomil missionaries who traveled west with a deliberate plan? Or was their connection more subtle, a shared intellectual heritage where similar dualist ideas simply found fertile ground in different soils? The fact that both groups used the same unique rite, the consolamentum, strongly suggests a direct transmission, a passing of the torch from one hand to another. Yet the Cathars developed their own complex church structure, which was far more public and organized than the secretive cell networks of the Balkans. This raises the possibility that the Bogomils provided the spiritual spark, but the Cathars built their own unique fire from it. The truth likely lies somewhere in between, a story of both direct teaching and independent evolution, making it difficult to draw a single, unbroken line from the Bulgarian mountains to the French countryside. This leads to another profound mystery, the question of their final fate. The persecutions undoubtedly shattered their visible communities, but did they truly vanish? One theory suggests a small, hardened remnant may have retreated into even deeper secrecy, preserving their gnosis in utter silence until the last initiate died, taking the final secrets to the grave. Another compelling idea proposes a gradual absorption. Could the last Bogomils in the East have slipped back into the older Paulician communities from which some of their ideas originally sprang, blending into a similar dualist tradition? Or, after the Ottoman conquest of the Balkans, did some find a surprising resonance with certain Sufi orders within Islam, like the Bektashi, who also cherished esoteric knowledge and a more mystical, less literal interpretation of scripture? This would not have been a conversion in the traditional sense, but a spiritual migration, where the core yearning for a hidden God could find a new home under a different name. Perhaps the most challenging mystery is the movement's own internal consistency. We often speak of the Bogomils as a single, unified church, but how uniform were they really? A Bulgarian peasant in the 10th century, a Bosnian noble in the 13th, and a Constantinopolitan intellectual in the 11th all might have identified with the Bogomil name, yet their interpretations of the sacred drama could have varied dramatically. Was Satanael a fallen son of God or an independent evil principle? Was the consolamentum an irreversible transformation or a step on a longer path? The scattered and hostile nature of our sources makes it nearly impossible to know. It seems more accurate to picture them not as a monolithic institution, but as a diverse and evolving current of thought, a river with many branching tributaries, each adapting to its local landscape while still flowing from the same profound source. Their greatest secret may be that they were never one thing, but many, and that is why they were so difficult to ever completely erase. A profound spiritual crossroads emerged as the Ottoman Empire solidified its power in the Balkans. For the descendants of the Bogomils, particularly within the isolated communities of the Bosnian Church, the arrival of a new religious power presented a complex and fateful choice. The theological landscape was starkly rearranged. On one side stood the established Christian churches of Rome and Constantinople, which had spent centuries branding their faith as a dangerous heresy and launching crusades against them. On the other side was Islam, the faith of their new Ottoman rulers, which offered a surprising number of intellectual parallels. The core Bogomil rejection of the physical in worship found a powerful echo in the Islamic prohibition of graven images. Their belief in a single, transcendent, and utterly spiritual supreme God resonated with the uncompromising monotheism of Allah. The intricate concept of the Trinity, a cornerstone of both Catholic and Orthodox theology, was something the Bogomils had always struggled with, seeing it as a confusing corruption of the pure, singular Godhead. Islam's clear Unitarian declaration that there is no God but God would have felt strangely familiar, even refreshing, to a mind steeped in dualist thought. It is a compelling theory that for some, conversion was not a rejection of their old beliefs, but a logical, almost seamless, transition into a new system that shared their deepest spiritual convictions about the nature of the divine and the unworthiness of material representations. Yet to attribute this historical shift purely to theology would be an oversimplification. The reality on the ground was shaped by the hard calculus of survival and status. The Ottoman millet system organized society by religious community, granting a significant degree of self-governance, but also imposing specific taxes and legal limitations on non-Muslims. For the Bosnian nobility, conversion to Islam was a direct path to preserving their lands, their political influence, and their positions within the new order. A nobleman who embraced Islam could retain his estate and even rise to a high rank in the Ottoman administration, while one who held fast to his faith would see his power and privileges steadily erode. For the common people, the motivations were equally pragmatic. The jizya, the poll tax on non-Muslims, was a heavy financial burden on already struggling peasant families. Conversion offered relief from this economic pressure and provided better legal standing in Ottoman courts. The Bogomil communities, already marginalized and persecuted by the very Christian powers now defeated by the Ottomans, owed no deep loyalty to either Rome or Constantinople. Their conversion can be seen less as a sudden theological awakening and more as a pragmatic decision made by a community with no powerful allies left, choosing a path that offered social advancement, economic relief, and a ruler who, for the first time, was not actively trying to exterminate them. This leaves us with a historical question that refuses a simple answer. Did the Bogomils convert to Islam because their beliefs prepared them for it, or did they convert despite their beliefs for purely worldly reasons? The most honest analysis suggests a fascinating interplay of both. The unique theological position of the Bosnian Church created a population that was, in a sense, religiously unmoored from mainstream Christianity. They were not devout Catholics or fervent Orthodox believers. They were already dissenters. This made them far more receptive to a new religious identity when the old political order collapsed. The iconoclasm and transcendent theology of Islam did not clash with their worldview. It provided a new, socially acceptable and powerful vessel for spiritual sentiments they had long held in secret. The conversion was likely a convergence, where political opportunity and social pressure met a theological landscape that did not require a profound inner rupture. The soul that had yearned for a distant God of spirit and had rejected the physical sacraments of the Church could find a new form for that yearning under the call of the Muezzin, in a faith that also turned its face away from idols and toward a single, unseen deity. In the end, the Bogomils did not so much vanish as they underwent a final, profound transformation, their secret gnosis dissolving into the cultural tapestry of a new empire, leaving behind one of history's most intriguing and controversial spiritual legacies. The quiet rebellion of the Bogomils did not end with the fall of their last medieval communities. Their ancient struggle for spiritual authenticity is finding new voices in a world saturated with information yet starved for meaning. In our modern, often post-religious age, their core principle of gnosis, the direct and personal knowledge of the divine, resonates with a profound intensity. Many seekers today feel a deep distrust of large, centralized religious institutions, viewing them as mired in dogma, scandal, and political entanglement, much like the Bogomils viewed the medieval church. The promise of a faith that bypasses all intermediaries, a path where truth is not handed down by an authority but awakened within the individual soul, holds an undeniable allure. This is not about blind belief, but about transformative inner experience, a concept that feels perfectly suited to an era of personal spiritual exploration. Their radical worldview extends beyond a simple theological alternative. The Bogomil declaration that the material cosmos is a flawed creation, a prison for the spirit, is interpreted by some contemporary thinkers as a powerful, ancient critique of our own hyper-consumerist society. We live in a world engineered for desire, where our worth is often measured by our possessions and our attention is a commodity to be bought and sold. The Bogomil rejection of the material can be seen as the ultimate act of defiance against this system. Their asceticism, their refusal to be defined by the flesh or its cravings, becomes a radical model for opting out of a cycle of endless production and consumption. It frames the pursuit of wealth, status, and sensory pleasure not as paths to happiness, but as cleverly designed traps that keep us forgetful of our true spiritual nature. This perspective transforms their medieval austerity into a timeless wisdom for the disenchanted, a call to prioritize the inner world over the relentless demands of the outer one. Online, in the digital forums and social media groups where new spiritualities are born, you can find small but dedicated communities actively seeking to reconstruct the Bogomil path. These are not historical reenactors, but modern individuals piecing together the fragments of Bogomil belief, from their dualist cosmology to their reverence for texts like the Secret Supper, and adapting them for contemporary life. They discuss the practical implications of living with a Gnostic mindset in the 21st century, exploring how to cultivate inner gnosis through meditation, study, and ethical living. They frame the Bogomils not as a dead heresy, but as part of a perennial wisdom tradition, a stream of secret knowledge that runs beneath the surface of history, waiting to be rediscovered by those who feel out of place in a purely materialistic universe. The Bogomil flame, carefully guarded for centuries, has been passed into a new era, its light now offered to all who seek a key to a different kind of freedom. Their entire existence was a silent protest against the world as it was given. The Bogomil worldview formed one of the most radical and consistent dualist systems ever conceived, a complete spiritual alternative that answered the deepest questions of the human condition. At its heart was an unyielding dualism, a belief in two eternal and opposed gods. The true God was pure spirit, boundless light, and infinite goodness, a being so transcendent that he had no direct hand in the flawed reality we experience. This cosmos, with all its suffering, injustice, and decay, was the creation of a lesser, evil god, the demiurge they called Satanael. He was the cosmic jailer, and the entire material universe, from the stars above to the very flesh on our bones, was his meticulously crafted prison. This single, shattering idea reframed everything. It was not humanity that was flawed through sin, but the very fabric of creation itself. This vision offered a powerful explanation for the problem of evil. Why does a good God allow suffering? The Bogomil answer was stark and simple. He does not, because this is not his world. The pain, the inequality, the natural disasters, all were the logical outcomes of a flawed creation built by a malevolent or incompetent being. The established church, in their eyes, was not the solution but part of the problem, a grand institution built to worship the very jailer who had built the walls. This led to their ultimate goal, not reforming the prison, but escaping it entirely. Their path to salvation was one of radical awakening and renunciation. They believed that within each person was trapped a divine spark, a fragment of the true God's light, lost and amnesiac within the material shell. The purpose of life was not to prosper in this world, but to remember our true origin and find the way home. Their Christ was the key to this escape. He was not a flesh and blood savior who died for sins, but a divine emanation, a being of pure spirit sent from the true God on a rescue mission. His role was not to offer a blood sacrifice, but to be a teacher and revealer. He came to bring gnosis, the secret knowledge of who we truly are and where we come from. His crucifixion was an illusion, a final lesson demonstrating the power of spirit over the material illusion of death. His true resurrection was the awakening of this liberating knowledge within his followers. This meant salvation was not achieved through faith in a historical event or by participating in the church's physical sacraments. It was an internal, personal transformation achieved through the direct acquisition of gnosis. To know yourself is to know you are divine light, and that knowledge alone is what sets you free. This internal awakening had to be embodied in a life of extreme discipline. Their path of asceticism was the practical application of their cosmic truth. Since the body and the world were the prison, every comfort and connection became a chain. They rejected marriage and procreation to avoid ensnaring more divine sparks in matter. They practiced strict vegetarianism and abstained from wine, seeing them as substances that entangled the spirit in the base passions of the flesh. They refused to swear oaths, withdrawing their consent from the entire feudal system that bound society. Their iconoclasm was a total rejection of the physical church, its crosses, its icons, and its sacraments, which they saw as empty rituals designed to pacify the prisoners. Every denied pleasure, every refused oath, was a deliberate act of defiance against the creator of the material world. The culmination of this entire path was the consolamentum, the spiritual baptism that marked the soul's final liberation. This was not a ritual with water or wine, but a direct transmission of the Holy Spirit through the laying on of hands by a perfected one. It was the ultimate seal of gnosis, the moment a person was set irrevocably on the path back to the realm of light. For the devout, receiving this on their deathbed was the goal of a lifetime, purging the sins of a life lived in the world and promising permanent freedom from the cycle of reincarnation. In this single, coherent system, the Bogomils offered a complete package, a compelling explanation for evil, a clear map of the cosmos, and a direct personal path to salvation that bypassed the institutional church entirely. It was a faith that located ultimate authority not in a pope or an emperor, but within the awakened heart of every individual, a quiet revolution that challenged the foundations of their world by daring to imagine a reality beyond it. Their incredible journey began as a secret whisper in the Bulgarian mountains, a spiritual rebellion that would ripple across continents and centuries. From these humble origins, the Bogomils crafted a radical vision of reality, challenging the very foundations of medieval power. Their secret gnosis traveled west, igniting the Cathar movement and provoking crusades, only to be hunted to the edge of extinction by fire and sword. They were the champions of a profound spiritual freedom, their intellectual courage a quiet beacon against the overwhelming force of dogmatic authority. They dared to assert that the divine resides within each person, that true faith is a matter of inner knowledge, not external ritual. Their story is a timeless testament to the human spirit's refusal to be confined, a reminder that the search for truth often carries a heavy price. In our own age of overwhelming information and countless beliefs, what can these ancient heretics teach us? Their legacy challenges us to look beyond surface appearances, to question inherited dogmas, and to courageously seek our own personal truth, no matter how unsettling it may be. They remind us that dissent, though costly, is the very engine of spiritual and intellectual evolution. What hidden path calls to you in your own search for meaning? Share your thoughts on these forgotten histories in the comments below, and subscribe to continue exploring the hidden corners of esoteric spirituality.